Spyro the Dragon is an absolute classic gaming icon, and I just don't get the first game, at least. It's been really curious going through this last game, and here I am making another video after quite a little bit of absence, and I honestly feel like I'm just becoming this super negative channel, which is interesting since at the beginning of this year I said I really wanted to focus more on positive reviews, but I just have not really been super hyped about a lot of the media I've been enjoying this year, which is weird because it's also been the best year of my life. And yet I feel like so many of the games and books and movies I've been enjoying have just been kind of not that great. But anyway, back to Spyro. It's been really interesting going back, and people were really hyped about this Spyro Reignighted trilogy. I waited till the Switch version came out because the only time I get to play games are on portable anymore. But I just found it absolutely fascinating to pick this out as sort of a relic and see what really made him so special. And it was very interesting going in initially because I was like, wow, okay, I get it. This feels like such a literal translation of 2D gameplay into 3D. It doesn't really pull to the strengths of what a 3D game is. I feel like it really does feel like a transliterated 2D game put into a 3D space. And I have played the original Spyro before, but coming back and revisiting it in the Reignited trilogy, getting to look at it with all the new bells and whistles, that was really fun. But I was like, okay, this doesn't really hold up, in my opinion. The gameplay feels really not that great in terms of what we know 3D games can do. It feels very linear, which can be great, but the challenges don't feel very satisfying. The controls feel kind of stiff and turning. It feels like a game that is still trying to figure out what 3D is. And I thought, that makes sense. This is an older game. You really have to judge things by the time they're out. Some things have aged and we've improved. And so you really should judge things in the context of where they came from. And I think that's 100% legit. But what's absolutely fascinating was that I then began to look up, because to me I consider the first amazing, great, the granddaddy of all 3D collectathons specifically to be Super Mario 64. That's the game that codified the first one to work. It was really the first one to do anything, but it's also the first one to really work. It set the bar. And I thought, okay, so it's really interesting. Let's see how far apart these two are. You know, Spyro clearly is still in that awkward stage where they hadn't quite figured out 3D collectathons yet. So I'm curious to see how quick the evolution was between something like this to 64. And upon looking at it, this came 2 years after Super Mario 64. And I find that just absolutely fascinating. How in a world that existed after Super Mario 64 were people unable to figure out how 3D gaming worked? Was it just the idea that they were scared to rip off Super Mario 64? I guess I don't really understand. Because this feels like they should have come in the opposite order, that you had games like Spyro coming out first that didn't really have a grasp on how 3D worked, and you have games like Super Mario 64 that really pull to the advantages of movement in and of itself being fun. They focus on exploration and using the movement systems to get to interesting and unique places. That happens in like once in all of Spyro, whereas it's the main gameplay gimmick in Super Mario 64. So Spyro's not a bad game, but it's so interesting to me to see that in this era of early 3D, it was outdated before it even came out. That's really, really just fascinating to me, that even trying to place it in the context of where it's at, I can't imagine thinking, oh yes, this is a clear, vast improvement on the principles set forward by Super Mario 64. It's just really fascinating to me to really wonder why this became as big an icon as it is, because I feel like it's always been outdated. It's never not been outdated, and even playing it now, it still feels outdated. And maybe that has a lot to do with the sequels. I haven't yet gone through 2 or 3, and it's possible that they really take things in a different, unique direction, but right now, having just played 1, it honestly feels a little bit like just kind of like people who didn't understand the genre they were working in, who were still trying to come to grips with 3D technology and with what level design was like and how to make movement feel good on its own, and I find that really interesting. So yeah, Spyro, the first game, played the Reignited trilogy. Good time. It is a solid 3 out of 5, I guess. But really interestingly felt kind of out of time. And not just because I'm playing it in a modern day setting, but because even in the context of the games that were out at the time, I feel like it was really lacking a lot of basic ideas that had been kind of codified at that point. I find that really interesting. I wonder what you guys think about it. Is this something that you feel had other charms that outweighed kind of the lacking gameplay, or do you think that I'm missing something, that there's another appeal to it besides it goes beyond the lack of exploration and the kind of really simple, basic linear level design and the lack of real challenge in the gameplay? What do you guys think? Is there something more? Is this more than just a 3-star game, or was this the basis that then they built off of much bigger and better sequels? My name's Dolan Malna. God bless.